2 for on DIY, like the DeWalt 18-volt Combi Kit, only €139.99. Shop in-store, online, or with click and collect. Woodies, we're all homemakers. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. You can text us 53106. We're streaming the conversation as well. You can listen on News Talk. Watch us on the Off the Ball social and digital channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. They say that sport and politics don't mix. We've seen Vladimir Putin try to enhance the global reputation of Russia by bidding for the Sochi Olympics and the World Cup, hosting those events, and now he's invaded Ukraine. So the sporting world has reacted from the bravery of the Kyiv mayor Vitaly Klitschko, the former world heavyweight boxing champion, his brother Vladimir Klitschko. They're going to fight until the bitter end, to the strong statements of Ukrainian sports stars Andriy Shevchenko and Alexander Zinchenko. And joining us on the line to discuss the ongoing situation is Rob Harris, the global sports correspondent of the Associated Press. Rob, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So the developing news today, Rob, is that Poland will not play Russia in a World Cup qualifier playoff. So Robert Lewandowski's tweeted the following today: "It is the right decision. I can't imagine playing a match with the Russian national team in a situation when armed aggression in Ukraine continues. Russian footballers and fans are not responsible for this, but we can't pretend nothing is happening." This, Rob, puts FIFA in a bind, in a corner to make a decision, and hopefully the right decision.
Yeah, and they've been trying to avoid making a decision at FIFA. There was a press conference by John Infantino on Thursday. At least he did speak after a planned council meeting, but no way distancing himself from Vladimir Putin, even though the FIFA statement did say they condemned Russia's actions in Ukraine, but they haven't addressed the footballing matters, which might seem trite at this moment, but that is a priority for FIFA. It's the requests that are coming in from the football world. And as you mentioned, we've seen sporting events used by Vladimir Putin over the years to enhance his reputation, to perhaps cover for some of his more nefarious acts as well, and his aggressions to Ukraine and corruption of sport indeed in recent years. But as things stand now, Poland said earlier in the week they didn't want to go to Moscow to play this World Cup qualifying semi-final playoff. Now they're saying they don't want to play Russia at all.
So I just want to play, Rob, the exchange you had during the week with Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, after Russia invaded Ukraine.
Will you be retaining your Order of Friendship medal that you received from Vladimir Putin after the 2018 World Cup? And in light of all the developments that have happened now, do you have any regrets about the 2018 World Cup, your glowing endorsements of Vladimir Putin and his conduct? Because they had already annexed Crimea at that point in 2014. And there have been concerns raised, particularly in the British government, that sport does help to legitimise the actions of a country like Russia when it acts aggressively towards a neighbour. So will you be reflecting on perhaps the role of sport and how it can help to embolden a leader like Vladimir Putin in taking action, as it has done aggressively in Ukraine?
Thanks, Rob. We are constantly reflecting on the role of sport. In particular, the role of sport in trying to bring people together in a peaceful environment. Even people, countries who don't have relations with each other or who are in a conflict with each other. This is a constant in our thinking, and I firmly believe in sport to bring people together. Football is the people's sport as well. It's not about individuals, it's about all the people from all over the world. And honestly, today, right today, if we had this press conference yesterday, maybe I would say something else, I don't know, but today my thoughts are really on all the people who are affected by this escalating conflict and nothing else.
In 2018, Gianni Infantino said that the world was in love in Russia when they were hosting the World Cup, and we know he's had a friendly relationship with Vladimir Putin if you look at the photographs. And Rob, should he be embarrassed? Is he embarrassed? Because you filibustered your question, but I suppose these are things he can't ignore now.
Well, particularly, it was part two. The first part to that question was actually in 2018, a few days before the World Cup final, when I asked him about his comments about saying he was on the same team as Russia, and he talked about Vladimir Putin and his close friendship with him, and saying we'd seen a new Russia. And I asked him then, well, do you think these people would agree, the victims of MH17, those who've been annexed by Russia, and various other issues involving the Russian state led by the aggressions of Vladimir Putin? And he evaded it then. Since then he received the Order of Friendship Medal from Vladimir Putin. And we've seen further escalations in the doping scandal as well, a reason that shows how Russia has corrupted sport, let alone its actions annexing and taking over territory in Ukraine. So for Gianni Infantino, it really raises questions of his judgment and of his leadership, of who he associates with. And we do really see him very often with the autocrats of this world. You know, how often have we seen him in Saudi Arabia with Mohammed bin Salman, who's implicated in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the Saudi journalist in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. Bin Salman denies wrongdoing in terms of any link to it. And there are also questions, of course, over Infantino's broader leadership too in terms of sporting decision-making. So if you look into the picture of it, there are deep concerns about how he's led world football, from the likes of UEFA and CONMEBOL as well. So while it might have marked a break from the era of corruption when Sepp Blatter was overseeing FIFA, certainly FIFA is no less controversial for a whole broad range of different other matters.
Did he give you an answer off tape, Rob, about that friendship medal?
No, I have been pursuing with FIFA to ask about it. It was quite a clear question. Maybe my question did go on a bit. I was on a Zoom, so I wasn't sure he could actually hear. So one of the reasons you might sort of go on a bit longer is just to make sure he has picked up the thread of the question, and probably would like to know if he's actually got a message to Vladimir Putin. That's something I've asked FIFA today. Has he been in direct contact with Putin? Has he made any request in terms of how he deals with the situation, warning him of the sporting consequences, perhaps, of maintaining the action, the aggression, the attempt to take over Ukraine? Even the IOC, who we've talked about so often as being quite lenient towards Russia, despite the doping scheme run by the state, even the IOC have said that sports events should not be held in Russia at the moment. They've called on international federations to take their events out of Russia, and indeed Belarus, where Russian troops are launching some of their attacks into Ukraine from.
UEFA, to perhaps give them some credit, Rob, has made quick moves. St. Petersburg stripped to the Champions League final, moved to Paris now, insisting matches involving Russia be played on neutral soil. Are these moves with teeth or just symbolic actions in your view?
The fact they acted so swiftly in taking that Champions League final off Russia was a decisive move. I think it followed conversations with political leaders in Europe as well, realising the status of Russia still having that Champions League final, and an endorsement of the status it was being seen as, given the way Vladimir Putin does so associate himself with these major events. So they probably acted even quicker than I imagined, but then the week did develop at a faster pace, although in many ways exactly how Western intelligence agencies were calling it. And UEFA are now turning their attention to Gazprom and how to end that partnership with the Russian energy giant, state-owned. So we have actually seen a tone of language from UEFA which indicates that they get the outrage towards Russia and the need to act swiftly, in marked contrast to the lack of pace of response from FIFA. They probably hope that there's another month or the qualifier, so they could probably hold back. But as we're seeing, the fact we've got Polish players now speaking out, led by Lewandowski, saying they shouldn't be playing Russia, does really put pressure on FIFA to act. Well, at the same time, there's a potential to set a precedent if they were to throw Russia out of World Cup qualifying, in terms of the actions of other countries going forward, in terms of how they might act militarily towards another.
So what, given you follow FIFA closely, what do you predict they're going to do?
I mean, it's very hard to see this game being played at the moment, but maybe FIFA were trying to hold out in a sense. There might be some resolution to this, if there's some sort of end to the hostilities, some sort of impasse that allows them to sort of claim that there's no ongoing action. But, we are certainly seeing militarily, obviously, that Russia is continuing to pound Ukraine. But it seems that, FIFA is trying to avoid a decision. As things stand, it's hard to see Russia playing that game if this intervention, this occupation of Ukraine does continue. Let's not forget as well, if Russia do qualify for this World Cup, they won't even be known as Russia at the tournament if the WADA sanctions are abided by, because part of the doping cover-up, and not just the cover-up of the scandal, but the cover-up of the cover-up trying to block the investigators in recent years, means that Russia have to have an alternative name, like the ROC we've seen at the Olympics in recent weeks, so perhaps the RFU. So, probably reflecting how FIFA has not acted significantly towards Russia, despite the footballing prongs of that doping scheme as well.
Roman Abramovich, the Chelsea owner, is not on a sanction list from the UK government. I know there's parliamentary privilege used the other day by Labour MP to make comments on him. He's always denied, having close links to the Putin regime. Do you expect anything to happen in terms of the ownership structures of people like Roman Abramovich from the Premier League?
It would really be impacted by potential sanctions. There's no indication yet that they're coming towards Roman Abramovich, and what impact would any sanctions have? Would it just limit new investment? Would he still determinedly stay at the club? He's pumped in more than £1.5 billion into Chelsea since taking over in 2003. And he has actually been in the country in recent months, in October and November. I actually did encounter him myself in November at an event, so I was quite surprised to see him there. And, that shows, I think, that he has been committed, even though he has no UK visa at this stage, because he didn't renew it in the wake of the general crackdown on wealthy Russians that the British government enacted after the Salisbury poisonings. Well, there was no indication if he would or would not be approved for that if he did reapply.
It's a different issue from South Africa back in the apartheid era, Rob, but if Russia becomes the same pariah state that South Africa was then, could this make an impact, do you think, on what Russia are doing at the moment?
Well, could it have an impact in terms of how the population reacts? Do they hold such store to sport that them being cast out of sport would be something that would really impact the nation? We have seen some protests in the streets of Russia that have been clamped down on. We've seen how Putin has used sport to elevate things in the country, to elevate their standing on the world stage. So would there be a repercussion if the people of Russia were denied their sporting moments, or would sport find some compromise, like with the Olympics, where Russia is banned, but Russians still can compete? And it was similar after the disintegration of Yugoslavia 30 years ago, although, of course, Yugoslavia was banned from Euro 92.
FIFA have questions to answer, as you said at the outset here, Rob, and we see UEFA acting decisively. Whether they should have before or not or whatever, that's all irrelevant now. Right now, UEFA are acting decisively and have seen to be around issues, although the Gazprom was not mentioned in the statement yesterday, I saw, although they're looking to possibly end that association. But are FIFA receptive to the type of questions you ask? You ask these questions at these press conferences, you get the fudged answer, the filibuster from Infantino, then Poland up the ante today. Are FIFA still in a mindset where they hide behind the fact that they rule the game around the world? They don't want government interference. They actually kicked Kenya and Zimbabwe out of world football in the last few days. Do they feel? Is there still a feeling there with FIFA that they're untouchable?
Well, I mean, they do see themselves as the supreme body. They have been dented in recent months by the biennial World Cup rows, where UEFA and CONMEBOL are both threatened to boycott the World Cup, obviously, if it was turned into a biennial event. So that shows how actually the leadership of Infantino has been significantly challenged. And there is a presidential election next year too at FIFA, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But for now, good to speak to you. I do have to go off.
Okay. That's Rob Harris there from the Associated Press, who has to leave us there, the global sports correspondent. Just on the whole issue of Russia and the Ukraine and the maybe the reputational damage that Gianni Infantino has had with his association with Vladimir Putin. He didn't know that they were going to invade Ukraine, but not a good position for FIFA to be in, especially with Poland now saying they will not play that World Cup playoff against Russia. It's not a case of whether they'll play it at a neutral venue. They're saying that they will not play that playoff. So that's what's going on at the moment. We're back after the news between 2 and half 2 with Tom Parsons, the Gaelic Players Chief Executive, and also Colm Keys, the writer from the Irish Independent, on issues around, the Congress in terms of the fact that motion's been passed. Overwhelmingly, over 90% support to pass that motion, which will see a revamp of the Football Championship now between 2023 and onwards, which we will see in terms of football, a league structure, as we have now, a provincial structure, which we have now, then 2 tiers of 16 teams. So we'll have the top 8 seedings from the provinces, the provincial finalists, and then another 8 qualifiers from the league. Just to break away here, because we're having some technical issues, that's why we're just a little bit hesitant here. Leeds and Tottenham are into the second half in the Premier League. We got an update here on this one from Adam Dury.
Leeds still trailed Tottenham by 3-0, and their frustrations are starting to boil over, with a few cheap yellow cards picked up, mostly out of sheer desperation. Spurs have continued to look on the ascendancy, working the ball well, managing the game in cruise control. Son Heung-min did the hosts a reminder that Tottenham can turn it back on at any moment, though his skill to dribble through the defence exceeded the quality of his resulting finish. It's been too easy for Spurs at Elland Road. It's Leeds 0, Tottenham 3.
Okay, so Matt Doherty with his first ever goal for Spurs, and they're bouncing back after that defeat to Burnley. Leeds have